And then the dots, remember when the dots were really big, the thimble dots? And I could never, after a while, I had a really bad habit of putting my finger in my mouth and the dot would come off and I'd be like,
oh.
You're listening to Fussy Cutters Club podcast, a show that gives you permission to cut into the good fabric so you can make quilts you love. And now your host, who believes it's not a crime to love using novelty fabrics, Ange Wilson.
Welcome, Fussy Cutters. Today I sit down with Jess from Paper Pieces. Jess is one half of the creative minds and business acumen behind Paper Pieces. The business has been in existence for over 40 years, which, regardless of what industry you're in, to be in business for 40 years is a massive achievement. And I think it's testimony to the quality of the product that they put out, the dedication that they have to helping people make the best EPP quilts that they can. For those of you who don't know, EPP stands for English Paper Piecing. It's a technique where you fold fabric over paper and use the paper to provide structural integrity to the shapes that you're using, and you hand stitch it together. At the end, you remove the paper and then you quilt as per a normal quilt. Jess is super lovely. I've known Jess for probably 8 years or so. In all that time, nothing has wavered from their dedication to the customer. And it's really amazing to see all the new stuff that they're working on, to see the way that they approach their projects, the respect that they give a pattern designer, which is at times unusual and lacking in the quilt industry. The pattern designer is often the last person that gets thanked in everything, if they get thanked. So it is with great honor and excitement that I sit down with Jess, and I hope you love this conversation. So let's get chatting. Hi, Jess. Welcome.
Hi, Angie. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Now, we have met in person. Have we met in person? Or do I just feel like I've met you in person? But no, we never met at market, did we?
I don't think so.
No. Just feels like I have. So
I know we've been together for a long time.
I know. You guys have been around for like how long now?
So Paper Pieces has been in business for 41 years as of this year. And I have been involved since 2012.
Yep. Okay, because I was going to say there is no way you've been in it since before you were born.
No.
You were so gifted at it and you knew what you were going to do. You started it before you'd been conceived.
I was Texas in bureau.
So is it a family business for you, or you work for them? How does that work?
It's like complicated. A lot of times I joke like I need to draw a family tree for you. But long story short, my husband grew up with our business partner's family.
Yep.
So it's like family.
Yep. And so what is it about paper piecing that lights your fire, gets you excited?
That is such a great question. I love that it's such an old method, but it's constantly being made new again.
Yep.
By new generations and bringing in all these cool new fabrics. There's just so much new to something old, and I think it's really cool to be able to carry out that tradition.
Yep. And so would you say, if someone asked you if you were like a modern quilter, a contemporary quilter, a traditional quilter, what would you, if you had to class yourself at this point in time, what would you sort of say is your go-to style?
So right now in my sewing journey, I'm finding that my tastes are changing, and I'm kind of in the middle of what would be considered modern, in my opinion, and traditional. I'm finding myself drawn towards less bright fabrics and some more traditional patterns I'm leaning towards. So I think I'm somewhere in the middle.
It's funny because, like, I think everyone kind of evolves. Like, there's this core aesthetic that runs through someone's work, and then over their journey they kind of weave over the top of it, where they I want to say, dabble with other things, and it solidifies their core aesthetic. And so they go out and they try a little bit of this, and then they bring a little bit of that back in, and they go out and try. And I think it's really a testament to patchwork that there's enough flexibility in it that people feel confident to go, yeah, okay, I can go out and try this. And if it doesn't work, it's not a big drama. I'm finding myself at the moment really drawn to William Morris fabrics. And if someone had said to me, you're going to become obsessed with these, I'd be like, not my cup of tea. No, thank you. And now I can't seem to get enough of them. And I know that it's cyclical, like I'm going out and I'm trying and playing with all of these things, and I look forward to seeing how it influences other things, because I think at your core there's some stuff that you like since you're a kid, like, you know what I mean, like there's some things that you go, oh, I look back on my photos of me as a child and that color is very prevalent all the way through. Do you this is a behind the scenes question, do you sew a lot of the patterns in your business? Do you find yourself stitching a lot?
Yes. So I'd say 90% of the stitching that I am doing is for samples. My business partner does a lot of it as well. But we kind of team up, and I'm always making something for our videos, for our social media pages and things like that. It's very rare that I'm actually sewing on a personal project, which is kind of sad, but also I love what I do. So it's a nice balance.
Yeah. And do you, with the work stuff, does that mean, do you think you pick projects because you want to make them, or do you try to pick projects that appeal to a broad base? What's the criteria for becoming a Paper Pieces pattern?
So that's actually a question that we talk about a lot here at Paper Pieces when we're discussing upcoming projects or working with upcoming designers. And we always want to make sure we're not alienating any specific demographic as far as modern and contemporary and traditional. But I think that's one reason we're so lucky to work with so many designers who cover all the bases. You know, we have the Karen Styles of the world and the Tulip Inks, and we do stuff with Kafe, and we've had the pleasure of working with Joe Morton and Mary Koval. So I really think we've been able to cover our bases nicely.
Yeah, and it's I think the fact that you've been in business for 40-something years is a testament to the fact that you have a really good relationship with your customer base. You listen, you're responsive, you're providing them with a really good quality product that they love to use. So, and that's really, I know this sounds really funny, but I find that really exciting, because I think in the same way that you were talking earlier about patchwork being an old skill set and EPP being an old traditional, steeped in heritage skill set, I think your business is starting to get to the same spot. There's been, because, I mean, 4 decades to be in business is a long time. And so you guys will have seen trends come and go. You will have, you know, experienced the ups and downs of commerce and all of those sorts of things, but you're still getting people excited about EPP. And that's really, I think that's really exciting. Like, it's a really nice way to look at, like, when you go through and look at your social media and the comments that are left and the people that tag Paper Pieces EPP in their makes, there's such a broad base and they're all having such a great time. Now, I'm going to ask something very controversial. Do you have a favorite project so far?
That is a really good question. I am so drawn to the pattern by Kim McLean. It's called Kim's Glorious Garden.
Yeah.
Ever since she approached us and was like, hey, I've got this idea, and showed us that, I have been obsessed with it. I think it's been my favorite project we've ever done.
Yeah.
But you talk about, well, thank you for everything you just said, by the way. I'm blushing over here. It's really nice of you to say. One of the patterns that really has stood against time well is Lucy Boston's Patchwork of the Crosses. That has been popular. I think the Australians, you guys made it popular about a decade before it really became solidified over here in the US. But I mean, that pattern just keeps on going and going.
Yep. And it's one of my all-time favorite block designs. And it's so simple because it's it's a honeycomb block, and then you have the squares for the setting, like if you want to join them all together. But it offers so much potential, especially if you're going to fussy cut for a secondary repeating design, that it just gives and gives and gives. And if I get stuck for inspiration or I'm not feeling the sojo, a lot of times I'll go search Lucy Boston on Instagram or Pinterest to see what other people are doing. And like, I haven't touched a Lucy Boston block in years, but it's the thing that I kind of go, oh, that always makes me excited to see. Yeah. And so
each block is like a face. There's no two blocks alike. It's the coolest thing.
And you see people use the same fabric, but in completely different ways. And some people will isolate one specific element in the fabric, and then someone else can be given the same fabric and isolate something completely different, and just totally different results. And so it is some of my favorite blocks I've ever made have been Lucy Boston Chula Pink in the early days blocks. And it's one of the things that I've been thinking about with William Morris. Is whether I can do something with his stuff. And so, yeah, it is just I don't know what it is about that block either, but I do really love it.
It's pretty cool.
It is. And then have you noticed, I always think there's just one stitch for joining EPP blocks, but over the last couple of years, and I say couple of years, it's probably been a decade, but the flat back stitch has made a big entrance onto I mean, I'm sure it's been there for decades, but it's just, do you have a preference for which stitch?
Yeah, so the flat back stitch is, like you said, it's kind of always been around because it's the only way to sew curved pieces together.
What do you call it that it's not flat back?
So in our original instructions, we call it an overcast stitch. Okay. And it's really the only way to do curved pieces. So if you were attaching clamshells together, you would have to use that type of stitch. Okay. But it's really handy. And if you're using it, for just hexies or honeycombs, whatever, your thread really does disappear. It is impressive.
Okay. And so obviously, as technology advances, things get invented and tools come on the market. Mm-hmm. Do you have a favorite tool that you can't live without with it for EPP?
Yes, but it's not necessarily new technology. It is my custom fitted thimble from a gorgeous woman here named Jan. With her company is called Thimbles for You. And she makes custom thimbles. And that's the one thing, since I got my custom thimble, I cannot sew without it.
Oh, wow. I'm going to have to check it out because I've been struggling with the leather fit over this, and I can never get one that fits my little chipolata fingers. And then the dots, remember when the dots were really big, the thimble dots? And I could never, after a while, I had a really bad habit of putting my finger in my mouth and the dot would come off. And I'd be like,
oh. And those are very popular for us. We sell the Jilly dots.
Oh, okay. The
little red rubber ones. And those are great. If I'm in a pinch, I'm happy to grab one of those.
And I'd say they'd be good too for stitching on the go because I can't imagine that you'd be very happy if you lost your thimble on an airline. But yeah, it's an interesting thing because you see lots of stuff get invented, I guess, to help. And it's always interesting to see what stands the test of time. And stuff comes on the market and you're like, oh, I can't live without that. And then a few years later, you don't use it anymore. But yes, I'm going to ask you a totally different question.
Okay.
If you could do it all over again, is there a pattern that you've passed on doing that you would pick up and do? Or is that I can't answer that question because it's a trade secret?
I honestly, maybe we should pass on it, but I can't think of a pattern that I have passed on. We're very easygoing and easy to work with.
Yes, you are.
Which I'm happy to say and put that out there. The problem is that the general problem that we run into is that we're a pretty small company. We've joked before that we're a couple monkeys in a trench coat, and not a lot of people realize that. So a lot of the time it boils down to we don't have like the bandwidth or the time. Like if something's in a pinch, it's like, I'm sorry, there's just no way we can squeeze that in.
Yeah.
Things like that. And it's probably something we should work on, but we don't really have any criteria. We're happy to work with anyone. Our door is always open.
But that's probably a good thing, right? That people think you're a bigger company it's a double-edged sword, but the fact that they think you're bigger than you are means that you make it look easy and seamless.
I guess that could be.
So that's always handy, I guess, in a business.
Yeah, it makes me more proud of our team.
Yeah.
Like we have a great, hardworking team that takes their job seriously.
So were you a math geek at school? Like you work with geometry now?
No. I'm still not very good at it. Like my husband is, and Max is actually, I call him our shape genius. So when we do get a custom order or we start working with a designer, he's the one that like builds their project mathematically and makes sure everything fits together. And our customer service girls are really good at math. So if I'm ever in a pinch, I like message one of them and like, hey, Kaylee, I need your help.
Yeah, that was.
And we do a lot of proofreading here. So luckily we catch most of our mistakes, really.
That's the thing that the first investment I really made that I'm like, I was desperately needed was getting someone else to do the math because I just do not have the brain power to sort it out. And it still amuses me greatly that I work in a business that requires so much math. Yeah. Now, I talked with Lou Kingwell, who is the creator of the Smitten quilt. Mm-hmm. And she said very lovely things, obviously. And I just wanted to go, can you talk about, or not necessarily with Lou, but any designer, what the process is for you guys to go from I've got this quilt and I think it would be great as EPP to getting it on the shelf? Like, are you happy for people to approach you? Do you approach people? Is there a time frame? How, like, does any quilt work for EPP? All of those things. That was a lot of questions.
Yes, and yes. We love it when designers reach out. I do find myself popping into booths at, like Houston, or I slide into some DMs for some designers and try to find ways to work together. As long as it basically boils down to, as long as the designer is willing to work on our timeline, because like I said, we got to try and squeeze everything in. We're happy to get a ball rolling. I mean, I don't know how public knowledge it is. We do pay a royalty to our designers. So that's always the first step, is getting a contract in place.
Yep.
Because we want to support you guys, the designers, just as much as anybody. You did the work, you designed it, you deserve it. And then basically from there, it's figuring out the shapes and sizes and quantities and bringing it to life.
So with, say, for example, and forgive me because I can never say these names properly, the La Paz.
Yeah, we just say La Paz.
When you upscale that when you partner with Pink Door and they upscaled the sizing and the piecing of that, do you guys offer that service for any quilt pattern, or do you go, we work with the designer and if the designer says it's okay, then we'll do it? Or do you kind of go, this is a standard, like an equilateral triangle is a standard shape. If you do this shape, but instead of a 1 inch, a 3 inch, then you can buy the pieces individually to upscale, or do you put kits together?
So it is. It's a really tricky territory because we are in this industry where it's been around so long, like what's new?
Yeah.
So it basically depends on exactly what you just described. If you're going to package it and say, we're doing Willeen Hammerstein's La Passacaglia, then absolutely, I'm going to talk to Willeen. We're going to figure out how she can get the credit and work in a royalty. But if we're talking about a 2-inch hexagon upscaling to a 4-inch hexagon, and you're just calling it that, then let's do it.
And I can, hand on heart, testify that you guys are really focused on supporting the designer and paying the designer and making sure that they get the credit and the link. And I think that's part of why the business has been so strong and been around so long, is that you guys have such a good reputation in the industry for supporting designers and being collaborative. Absolutely. And so that's a really great thing. And so do you have any collaborations that have just launched that you can talk about or you're excited about?
Well, we just launched our first design with Sarah Thomas from Sarah Diddy.
Oh, yep.
She's a moda designer. So we've got one listed and we've got a few projects in the pipeline. And we're also working with Giuseppe, Juicy Juice with Andover. So yeah, there's just always something in the water. So
for everybody, I'm going to put it in the show notes. They should go sign up to your newsletter to stay in the know.
Yes.
And then Willie, I can never pronounce Willeen. Thank you. Has a new book out. I don't know how new it is. Number 5 of the Millefiori quilts.
Yes.
And we've talked about it on the show. Pink Door Fabrics are doing her, and I Googled it the other day because I was like, how do you pronounce it? It's Chaucer or Chaucer? But it's...
I wouldn't even attempt the...
Yeah. It's French for hide and seek. So...
exactly.
And I am so excited about it. And you've got the kits currently available if people want to get a head start on the website. I'm just trying to...
Yes, but the block of the month with Chelsea and the Pink Door team is a little bit different.
Oh, okay.
So if you were interested in that, you might want to...
Wait.
Just hold on to your seat
not wait.
For a few
it's out
days.
now.
Yeah.
It will be.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm actually going to sign up and do that one because I'm so excited about it.
Yeah.
One of the other ones that you do that's like a bucket quilt, because I think it's really funny. You guys seem to have all the bucket list quilts that quilters want to do, because you do a block kit for Dear Jane as well.
Oh,
so that if people want to,
Jane.
yeah, because she is a beast. And I don't know, like I would say I'm pretty good with traditional small piece piecing, but even I think if I was going to attempt Dear Jane, I'd probably EPP it, even just EPPing the border because it's the triangles. Mm-hmm. So you guys have like Dear Jane, you've got a lot of the Millefiori quilts. Is there a quilt that's come out in the last few years that you think is going to be a bucket list quilt for years to come? Can you predict it?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think that Katja Merrick, her A Homage to Grandmother's Flower Garden quilt, it was her quilt along project from 2021,
yep.
I want to say. And it's like a twist on a traditional grandmother's flower garden. But it's more like a wreath.
Yep.
It's really cool. You have to check it out on our website if you're not familiar with it. But I think that this is a quilt that will kind of stand against the rest over time.
Yeah, because it's a few years back,
mm-hmm.
Katie Jones from I'm a Ginger Monkey did Hexy MF. And it was a play on the Grandmother's Flower Garden as well. And it was really popular when I first started quilting. And then this one is that similar style where the hexagons are used to make flowers. But as you say, this one's in a really big wreath. So when it lays on the bed, it's going to give you a very interesting dissection of the wreath, because you're going to get like a little bit of flower on top, but you'll get the what do they call those? The drapage of the curves as it goes over the edge of the bed is going to make it look like a scalloped pattern. So,
Yes.
And she's done a background which is essentially the traditional hexagon motif, where you've got like a hexagon flower in the middle and then a border of hexagons and then another border of hexagons. So you get that honeycomb. Yeah. But it is really cute. And the one you've got on your website, the quilting on that is amazing.
Oh, yes.
That's the thing.
Katja does amazing work.
Yeah, and again, another name I can't pronounce.
Oh, Katja, also known as Katja Merrick. And she's from Canada, former quilt shop owner. She just retired from her shop and wound that down, and now she's going to focus on pattern writing and designing. And we've been working with her since 2014. So
yeah,
we've got a lot of projects with her.
And she, one of my favorites she does is Argyle, the Argyle quilt, which I hope is getting a lot of hits from Google now that Argyle the movie is popular. But it's, again, a play on hexagon shapes made up of other shapes. So if you like Smitten, then this is another quilt that is in that same vein of using shapes to make hexagons and then using those hexagons to make other shapes. That was such a really poor explanation of just go check the picture. Now, Queen of Diamonds has been massive for you guys as well.
Oh, my gosh.
I know. It's just it keeps on giving. Like it's really –
we are so lucky that I'm just so grateful that we had the opportunity to team up with Chelsea and Free Spirit and Tula and be a part of this project. I think it has definitely been our biggest project.
Oh, it's
in such a short amount of time. I'll add that in there because, you know, you look at Lucy Boston, you look at La Paz and Tula Nova. I mean, those projects over time have been hugely popular, but I mean, this was just like one huge go, right? In such a short amount of time.
Yeah. And there's a new one on, well, it's not new by the time this comes out. The Winterley, is it Winterley that she's called it? And it's the Christmas themed Queen of Diamonds.
Correct.
And again, looks completely different. The quilt just has a completely different feel to it, but still has that really striking diamond, I want to say lattice to it, but it's not even, there is nothing traditional about this quilt. It is very much in a really contemporary / modern take on EPP. And I don't know whether that's a combination of the fabrics or the style, like using these big diamonds. But yeah, it's just, I've loved watching them come together on Instagram.
But it just circles back to what we've been, you know, the beginning of our conversation. It's almost technically a Lancaster diamond quilt.
Yeah.
So it's just circling back to like something old made new again with fabric and making it EPP instead of machine pieced and throwing a twist on it.
But it is, I think that's the thing that I love most about it, is that you get, as you said, this sense of heritage and time and tradition, and then we all get to play with it. And I'm sure, you know, in 2 decades' time, people will look back on the quilts made in this year and go, oh, we've just built on that. We've just taken a twist of that and a pinch of this and a dash of that, and this is what we've got. And I think that's a really lovely way for all of us to be connected. And I don't think people stop and think about the fact that as makers and creators in this technique, and it goes for a lot of creative passions, we're all connected to the people who did it before us. And even you guys as business owners of a business that's been around for 40 something years, you're connected to the person who first thought, I'm going to try this. I'm going to start this business and see where it goes. And then like with Chelsea from Pink Door buying Renaissance ribbons, they're building on the shoulders of the people who went before them. And so it's this really lovely, solid thing in a time where so much seems transient and throwaway and easily forgotten about and flash in the pan. But
absolutely,
yeah, that's my little rant about traditionalism.
I will also mention about the Queen of Diamonds pattern. It was so cool to watch it morph in a sense when people were making it. So Chelsea and her team wrote the pattern so that the lattice strips are machine pieced on to the English paper pieced diamonds, which is such a cool way to blend methods and pull in people who are only familiar with machine piecing. Like, you'll still get a touch of something familiar at the end of this. But when people were getting to that stage, they're like, but wait, I'm having so much fun English paper piecing. I'd rather just hand stitch them all together. So it wasn't until later that we started making pieces for the lattice strips.
That is really cool.
And the cornerstone diamonds.
And do you go, I guess the thing that I always struggle with EPP, and it's a reflection of my technique, and so I'm asking for a tip. How do you go with it when the pieces start to get misaligned or there's a little bit of overhang, or is there an easy way to fix that, or do I have to unpick it and do it again?
No, so we touch on this a couple times, I think, in our Dear Jane project, because you see that a lot. It's unavoidable with the bulk of the fabric when you're adding in seams to a block and then sewing it to a lattice strip, for example, that has no seams. Your block's going to be bigger than the lattice strip. But the beauty of English paper piecing is that you have so much control over your fabric. So when I'm dealing with a piece like that, I lean towards tacking or putting a knot at each end, each corner, and then sewing down one half. And if it's really bad, I'll sew to the middle on one side and then sew to the middle on the other side.
Oh, yeah.
But usually just putting a knot in the corner will help big time.
Okay. And do they, because you guys have a YouTube channel, do you have videos that people can go and watch about learning how to EPP and tips and tricks and things like that?
Absolutely. About halfway down our homepage, there's like a beginner central link, and it's got everything you need from like, this is how our website works to this is how you use a needle and thread.
Excellent. And do you guys have any stuff on fussy cutting if people want to fussy cut for EPP?
I would say lightly, and it depends on the pattern. So we have a pattern called Stars and Crosses, and within that pattern, there's a little bit more direction on how to fussy cut and like what to fussy cut. But in a general sense, we don't have too much. No.
So,
because there's so many people out there like you and Pink Door and Tula that talk so much about it, and do such a good job of explaining it that I just,
and it's
let you guys do it.
It is really hard because I think the natural tendency of people is to go, oh, we can do it all. We can cover everything. And I think the reason that people succeed is when they concentrate on just doing one thing really well. And I've been, I've been really guilty of it because the temptation, and especially if you're a creative, is you want to try everything and do everything. But it is an interesting time when you realize if you just do one thing really well and get known for that, that's where the beauty of it and the longevity of it lies. Mm-hmm. So you talk about Kim McLean's pattern. I am desperate to sit down and talk to Kim McLean. Is there a pattern that you are yet to make that, like, it's a bucket list quilt for you?
Not really. Because I have made a Dear Jane with help, and I am working on a Kim's Glorious Garden. However, I scaled mine down a little bit to fit. Her original version is made to work with cave fabric, but I scaled mine down to work with my Tula stash. And I always think I'm almost done with it. And then she comes out with a new collection and I'm like, oh, I need that print in there. So I have to add a whole other row to fit the one print. So it's basically the, Lamb Chops Never Ending Song. Yep. This is my never ending quote.
Yep. And so is Chula your favorite designer so far, or it's hard to choose, like choosing a baby?
It is like choosing a baby. I mean, I love Tula. I have so much admiration for her and I love her designs. I have so much Tula fabric. Yep. I don't even know what to do with it all at this point. It's from when I made my Dear Jane quilt. It's completely in Tula pink fabrics.
Wow. Yeah.
So that kind of launched my collection.
Yeah, there's always a gateway fabric, either a gateway fabric or a gateway quilt that gets you into something. Yes. And then you're like, I'm all in.
Right now, I can tell you I'm obsessed with the latest collection from So Kind of Wonderful.
Oh.
It's beautiful.
I will have all links to the fabrics and stuff that we talk about because people obviously would like to add fabric to their collection, and I'm all about enabling that.
Amen.
Oh, is it the field cloth?
Cutting cloth?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's really soft. It's not it's a soft neutral type palette, but
yeah, it's kind of earthy. Yeah. There's a little bit of opportunity for fussy cutting, but you don't have to go overboard with it. It's just like neutral.
Yeah. Finding a good neutral is really difficult. And then when you find one, you tend to milk it for all it's worth and then go looking for another one. So Kind of Wonderful has some amazing quilt patterns as well.
I know. And they're lovely.
It's just so hard to stay focused. And that's probably a testament to how good everybody is, because I think when you see stuff and you're like, I want to drop everything and do that.
Yeah.
I'm looking at their Butterfly Fields quilt and it's such a fun play on traditional blocks.
Yeah.
But yeah, just so lovely. But I want to thank you, Jess, for giving up your time and coming to have a chat with us and to tell us a little bit about Paper Pieces. Everyone will send you the links. We'll go check out Jess's website, sign up to the newsletter. I am very much excited about all the stuff that you guys have coming out in the future. And I look forward to chatting with you again in 6 months' time about the next big quilt that you guys have got.
Awesome. I can't wait either. I also can't wait to hear from you about a cruise.
Oh, yes.
Thanks for listening to the Fussy Cutters podcast. Enjoyed listening? Why not subscribe so you'll never miss an episode? Did you know the quickest way to the heart of any podcaster is to leave a review or recommend the podcast to a friend? It's true. It is. Until next week, get out there and fondle that fabric.